This week on the Doughnut Box Podcast, we talk about how Chris saved me from a wedding day disaster.
And on the jail report, find out a real life Fast and Furious situation where an escaped convict stole a semi truck carrying not one, not two, but 10 brand new Chevrolet Corvettes valuing over $1.25 million.
What's next? The Rock and Jason Statham going to show up in this mess or what? And then, what else are we talking about, Chris?
See if Micah is a real true diehard Office fan because we're going to see if he can do the third quiz in a row where he goes 10 for 10 on his Office trivia. Micah loves The Office, but let's see.
Yeah, I love The Office. I'm a little nervous because the later seasons have got me a little shaky, but I will say this. What fries my donuts, we're going to talk about what really fires me up about post-COVID and how much people can be just horrible, especially at the airport. All that and more, including potentially Chris's upstairs neighbors bowling or whatever they're doing up there, all on this episode of the Doughnut Box Podcast. Let's go ahead and roll the intro. Hi, I'm Micah.
And I'm Chris.
And we've been friends for over 20 years.
Surprisingly, we haven't killed each other yet. Years ago, we started our own variety show, and it sucked.
Now that we're adults, we decided to give it another try. Like in the movie, life is like a box of donuts. You never know which one's gonna be the next one.
Wait a second, it's chocolates.
Oh, right. Okay, well, let's start the show.
This is the Doughnut Box Podcast.
All right, man. Hey, we're back for another episode of the Doughnut Box Podcast, and we are so happy that you're joining us again for episode number 9 of the Doughnut Box Podcast. And man, I am so excited. We're almost double digits of this season, and this season is going really, really great. Again, we're here on camera. If you're listening to us over on Spotify or via audio, we do encourage you to come over to our YouTube channel, which is at the Trash Can Network, or you can search us over at the Doughnut Box Podcast, and that is DOUGHNUT Box Podcast. We made it a little complex, but hey, that's the correct spelling in our mind of donut in my mind. So, you know, whatever you want to say.
Technically the correct spelling. And Micah, before we get started, I have to go on the record and I have to confess something to you and all of the Doughnut Box OGs.
Man, it's a confession I'm not expecting. What are you confessing here, sir?
I officially got an iPhone. Officially.
What? No way. No way. Okay, so I know that, you know, a lot of people may not know Chris and things like that, but man, he has been an Android person as long as I've known him. What prompted you to get an iPhone, my man?
So I am starting a new job and pretty much everything over there runs on Apple and Mac and iPhones. And I didn't want to be the guy that was like, oh yeah, here, let me come in with my Android and mess everything up. And so it was just easier for me to switch. But this is like my first Apple product I have bought for myself and I own. So it's different. It's a whole new world for me. So can y'all imagine, like, I'm almost, you know, I'm not gonna say my age on the podcast, but like I've gone all this way and I've never owned an iPhone, which is crazy.
Never owned an iPhone. So I've actually only owned one iPhone, but then again, this was a long time ago. I'll put it to this way: this is the iPhone 5S, so that should tell you about how long ago that was. Then again, you know, they come out with new products. It seems like every 6 months. So I think they're on 16 now. What?
Yeah, the 16 Pro 16, or whatever.
16 Pro or whatever.
So basic generic.
You just got the basic one.
Yeah, so it's different, but I had to tell you guys on the podcast, and so y'all can make fun of me and be like, "What? This guy's never."
No, listen. I'll tell you this much: it's interesting how much, and we're going a little rabbit trail before we get started on our regularly scheduled program. But I'll tell you this much: there is a legitimate beef between Android and iPhone owners. I don't know what it is, but I know a ton of people. I work in the IT tech industry, right? And there are so many people who are in both camps. We love iPhone, we love Android, and I mean, this will get people into fights. It really will. And so I do understand going to a new job if everybody's got an Apple, and especially if all of their computers and everything else is Apple related. I mean, it's you kind of. I wouldn't say you don't have a choice, but at the same time, I do understand it for
You
sure.
don't want to be
But
that guy. You know what I mean?
listen. I'm not going to judge you, but I'm still an Android guy myself, and we're not going to go into it. But that's okay. But so a little shocking that you got an iPhone, but hey, that's cool on your end. But welcome to the Doughnut Box Podcast. If we already haven't said so already, we are back to our regularly scheduled programming, and we've been kind of switching up week to week. If you haven't seen to this point, and we have been going free flow episode where we've been talking about either asking each other questions or just going into whatever we wanted to talk about. Our regularly scheduled programming is we have each individual segment. And so we're going to go through all of our segments today. And our first segment is the old fashioned donut, which is a story from our past. And as we alluded to in the intro, we are going to talk about how Chris saved me from a potential disaster on my wedding day. So, Chris, do you want to start the story? Or you want me to start the story?
Yeah, so I gotta set this up. I gotta do the setup for it. So Micah's bachelor party, his official bachelor party, it was just me, him, and a couple of his cousins, right? And so Micah was pretty much like, hey, low key, don't want to do anything that crazy, right? Like Micah is of the mindset, like I like, yeah, like maybe a couple of days before, maybe we'll go out, have a good time, but like the night before, don't want to get messed up before my wedding. So this was probably 2-3 days before. And so he was like, I just want to go to a minor league baseball game and I want to go to dinner and that's it. And so I remember his cousins being like, wow, like you don't want to get drunk like this and that. And again, Micah has talked about how that part of his family is very conservative, very like pious. So like even just having
very
a beer
religious, yeah.
in public is kind of considered a sin. So we just were like, yeah, let's go. And I remember these folks are from Mississippi, so they've never gotten to experience Texas culture. And so we went to Central Texas, and there's a lot of
We could say it. We're over in San Antonio, and San Antonio is. I hate to cut you off. San Antonio is very much of the Hispanic culture. We are very close to the Mexican border, so there is, and really and truly, this was Mexico first. I mean, this area
yep,
was all Mexico first, so there's a lot of Hispanic culture,
a lot
a
of
lot of
rich
Mexican
heritage.
culture. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. And continue. I'm sorry, I just had to set that
No,
up too.
so these Mississippi boys were in for quite a shock. So in Mississippi, there are a lot of racial tensions, I would put it that way. And so there, even though there's it's predominantly white and then African American, but they have a lot of tensions. Even though it's not spoken, there's like you can feel the underlying tension
Yeah,
when you go to the state. Actually, we were just recently there, and while we were there, you can feel the tension. So they're coming into this Hispanic heritage, right? And so we're at the baseball game, and it's Hispanic heritage. So there's like the chancla, there's Tejano music playing, there's people like up and dancing and doing the grito.
Henry the Puffy Taco. That's like their mascot is Henry the Puffy Taco.
And these boys look like they were like blown away,
Fish
like
out of water.
not in a good way, not in a good way. They were like, they felt like a fish out of water. So they were like, what is going on? Like, why are these people dancing? What's the deal with the tacos? What's the deal with the chocolates? Like, they were like, it made them feel uncomfortable.
It was definitely culture shock. Definitely culture shock.
So I remember like we went to the baseball game and it was fine and everything. And so we take, we're about to go home and they're like, wow, like, because Micah had a couple beers at the game, maybe two. I think you maybe had just 2 beers. You didn't,
Yeah,
or maybe
I just
one
had
beer.
2. No, it was just 2. And the big thing is, so just to kind of cut off in this. So I used to. It's funny because I probably drank more before I was the age of 21 than I did after the age of 21. Something about, not being able to or it being illegal had a little bit of, a bit to it. And so I'm not a big drinker now. If I'm going to have a few, it's going to be 1 or 2. Like I'm not looking to get messed up. Like I'm just not that guy.
Yeah. So I remember like, so Micah had like 2 beers at the game. I don't think you even had one at the restaurant. You didn't even have one at the restaurant.
No.
And so I remember like them being like, wow, Micah, like we thought we were going to have to carry you out on our shoulders. And like, I guess you have this
Right.
reputation of being like this drunkard. I don't
Like
know. With them,
party
like,
guy.
yeah.
Party guy. Yeah.
So we are, we're getting everything ready, and I remember like we go and do like the rehearsal the next day and everything. And mind you, like we had to keep the wedding and the location like kind of under wraps, like because of certain people who can't
Certain
act like.
family
Yeah,
situations,
certain family
unfortunately. Yeah.
like some of his family, like because of the situation, they didn't get the invitation until they got there. Like they didn't know where this place was going to be. And so I remember we did like the rehearsal, all that stuff. And so our friend, we used to work with him at Boot Corral. His name, well, Aiden. We'll say Aiden, I guess. Or you want to say his full name? Do you care?
Dude, well, we won't say his last name, but his name's Adrian. A shout out to Adrian because he's one of our OG Doughnut Box listeners. He's been listening to us probably since day one. He's out there in West Texas working in the oil field. So shout out to you, man. Big props to you, and thank you for being such a great fan over all this time. But yeah, no, Adrian, he came out there. And I think he had to work or something like that. So he wasn't able to make the first bachelor party, or like the bachelor party, the official one that I had. He was only able to come in the night before, and then he was going to leave pretty much right after the wedding. And, he had to go back to work. And that was understandable. I understood that. So he comes to town, and think about this, Adrian knows me from back in the day when I was a partier. Like, I did party quite a bit. And like, I'll admit, he was pretty much my drinking buddy. I mean, he was kind of the guy when I was underage. He had a house kind of out in the country. And so we would go out there and we would throw some parties. We had some good throwdowns when we worked with him. And it was a really fun time. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, drinking with him was a bad thing. It definitely was not a bad thing. But he comes into town, and I love Adrian. I do. But he could be such a bad influence on me sometimes. And he could pull me back into that mindset so fast. And so the biggest thing that I did not want to do is I did not want to be screwed up on my wedding day. Like, I did not want to be hungover. I didn't want to have any problems on my wedding day. One, because, any other day would have been okay. And, again, some people are going to go, oh, well, it's never okay to be drunk. And that, I hear you. But at the same time, the way that I feel about it, it's one of those things when your friend comes into town and you want to do that. If he would have come a couple days before, even the day before the rehearsal, fine. I don't mind showing up hungover to the rehearsal and we have, one night of partying or whatever. I don't have a problem with that. But this was the night before the wedding. And so he calls me and he says, hey, man, I'm hanging out at this bar. And, he'd been drinking there for a little bit. And he said, why don't you come out and have a beer? And I told him, I said, listen, man, my wedding's tomorrow. I don't want to get screwed up. Like, I'm not trying to get screwed up. I'm not trying to party all night. I'm not trying to do any of this stuff. And so this is where he's dangerous. I love Adrian. You're listening. I know you're listening, man. I love you to death. But he knows how to say things in just the right way to where you're going, okay, let's do it. It's fine. And so what he told me is he said, man, I haven't seen you and I wasn't able to be at the bachelor party. So let's just come out here just for a beer or two and it'll be fine. That's how it started. That's how it started. And so I end up going over there, and it was this place called the Rue Pub. I remember that. It's called the Rue Pub, and it was an Australian pub. And so we go over there, and it wasn't just one beer. Like, I'm talking, this was like a tall beer, like, the really, really tall beer. Like, it was what it was. So we started off with that, and then we started ordering what is called Vegas bombs. Have you ever heard of, I'd never heard of Vegas bombs before I had been to this place. For those of you who know what Vegas bombs are, it's a lot of alcohol is what it is. It is a lot of alcohol. And so the hard part about being with Adrian, I love the guy. He loves, like, when you're with him, it's so fun to the point where it's like you just forget about these things. It's like whatever he puts in front of you, you're like, sure, we're all having fun. We're having a great time, right? So just go ahead and drink it. It's fine.
And Adrian can drink a lot, like before he gets to the point where he's like messed up. Like he can drink a good bit.
And there's no problem with that. For me personally, at that point, especially like even now, right? I may have a drink with my wife's grandfather at times, but it's a drink, right? So you have to think about my tolerance level.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it makes you forget what your tolerance level is, because it's like, hey, I'm hanging out with Adrian, and like Adrian can but like, yeah. So I remember like The original plan was for the 5 of us to go to dinner or like hang out because it was going to be like me, you, our wives, and Adrian. Your wife wasn't feeling good. She wanted to go home, or I think she wanted to rest. And then I was like,
Yeah, she wanted an early night before the wedding. Naturally, I mean,
yeah,
we had to get up early and we had a lot to do. And, anytime before a wedding or a big event, my wife, she is a stressor. Like, I love her to death, but she does stress. And so she was, I wouldn't say stressed, but she was to the point where she's like, listen, I want to make sure that I'm well rested. I want to make
yeah.
sure that everything is good. So she's like, I'm not going out.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, well, like me and my wife, we're gonna go out to dinner or whatever. So I
Right.
was like, okay, so we're on the way back to the hotel, and I get this phone call from Micah, and I'm like, because I knew you were going out to like eat with whatever. I was like, okay, cool. And so I get this phone call, and it's Adrian. Adrian's like, hey man, how's it going? And I was like, bro, what's up, dog? He's like, dude. And at this point, I haven't talked to this guy in maybe 10 years,
Yeah,
probably.
that's what I was gonna say.
Like,
He hasn't talked to you in 8, 10 years at this
yeah.
point. Like you haven't talked to him since
Yeah,
then.
so so he's like, man, he's like, do you want to? And it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, bro, I was gonna go home, and I was like, or go to the back to the hotel, and he was like, man, I haven't seen you in so long, just come hang out with us for a bit, kind of the same thing, like it'll be cool, we won't be out that long. And I was like, yeah, like I told my wife, I was like, is it cool if I go? And she was like, yeah, go. So I pull up, and at first when I walked in, I couldn't find y'all, and I went to the back room. I remember I just walked up to Micah, and Micah has the most puzzled look on his face when I walk up. He's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, bro, you called
So
me from your
the le-
phone.
the legitimate term that I used, and I'm gonna not say the vulgar term because it was a little bit more vulgar than this, because I'd had a few drinks at this point. But I turned to Chris because the door is right here, like right to my. We were almost right directly by the door, and he comes from the other side of, like he's walking up the other side of the bar, like the other end of the bar. And so I turned to him and I'm like, "What the heck are you doing?" And that is the
Like,
nice way of putting it. I
kind
was
of
like,
jump
"What the
like,
heck are you doing here, man?" And he was like, "You called me off of your phone." And I was like, "I did? Like, what are you talking about?" And so piecing everything together from what I remember, that sounds really bad, but from what I remember is, Adrian was like, we got to party with some other people. Who else is in town? Somebody else has got to like join us. Like, what is Chris doing? And I was like, well, he's out with his wife or whatever. And I had left my phone at the bar. And I guess I left it unlocked or something, or maybe I even gave it to him. I don't know. To be real with you, I don't know. And so he called Chris. Chris was a buddy. He showed up, and at that point, he's like, oh, "Man, he screwed up," because I was pretty messed up at that point. Luckily for me, though, I was thoughtful, and for every drink that I had downed a water at the same time just to make sure, because I was like, "Listen, I'm not going to do this." But Adrian, God love him, he's like, "Listen, it's tradition on a wedding night. We got to go party. Like we got to go party. We got to go to the club. Like we got to really like all night long like party." And I was not about that. I was like, "Bro, that might have been me 10 years ago, but now like my wife will kill me if I show up tomorrow after an all-night rager like that. Like there's no way that I could do that." And I just remember he ordered Chris a drink. Chris doesn't drink, right? He's a pass. He don't drink. This should tell you how good of a friend he is. He doesn't drink, but he showed up to the bar because I called him. And so he gets the drink, and we all take this drink, right? Apparently, Chris didn't take it.
I took like a little sip of it, and then I did like the hey, and then I did like the I made y'all think I took the shot, and I was like, hey, bro. But I remember you being like, I don't know if this was when I first got here, or maybe a little after, or maybe when Adrian went to the bathroom, but you were like, thank God you're here. You got to get me out of here. Like you were just like, bro, I got to go home. Like, and I was like, okay, like,
Because what's
I'll get
hard
you out
is
of here.
as much as I love Adrian, and again, I know you're listening and I love you to death, but it was one of those things of like, if it was the night before, fine. If it was the day before that, no big deal. I don't care. We have an all night rager. It's no big deal. But the thing was, it was like the night before my wedding, and we also had to pick up my wife's wedding dress because it was at her grandparents' house. And so it was one of those things, it's like, we still got things we got to do. We still got to pick up this dress. And that was imperative for the wedding the next morning, right? I didn't see the dress, but of course, it was in the big thing. And so we were in coordination with her uncle and everything else to get this dress and all this other stuff. And so he was like, and I'll be honest with you, I love Adrian to the point where I'm not going to say no to the guy. Like, I'm not going to say no to the guy. If he's like, let's go clubbing. If it wasn't for Chris, I'd have been like, yeah, no. Okay, fine. Yeah, whatever. Let's go have some fun, right? Because Adrian is just such a fun guy. Like, I love him to death. Like, he could make anything fun. I'm just going to take a side note. When we worked at the boot corral, the dude can make anything fun. He can make stocking shelves fun. I don't know how he can do it. He can make anything fun. So you just want to hang out with him. You want to go and party with him. Like, it's just what you want to do. And again, if it was even the day after, totally fine. Like, but since it was the night before the wedding, it was like, man, I can't do this. Not just that, but we had to be at the venue at 7 a.m. And so I knew, like, okay. And Chris knows me. I am not a morning person, especially after a night of partying. Like, I am no good to anybody. Okay. Like, I'm not good to anybody. I knew I had to be dressed, ready, because Christopher was going to come pick me up and, take me to the venue, and I needed to make sure of that. Not to mention, so I had also written my vows digitally. So like I wrote them on the computer, and my plan was, okay, I'm going to transfer them onto paper, because of course you don't want to like pull out your phone, like read your vows on your phone. It's a lot better if you have like the paper version of it, right? And so I still hadn't done that either. So there was things to be done, is what I'm saying. Like, there was the dress to pick up, there was the vows, there was all this stuff. And so, Chris really helped me out because, it was like, oh, let's go rage. Let's go have some fun. Let's go do this. And Chris was like, nah, man. Let me take you home. Let me take him home. Like, he's already screwed up. And so finally,
Adrian kept pushing, and he was like, I feel like somebody's got to go party for us, though. And I was like, yeah, bro, you go be the representative, bro. Like, you go be the representative.
Yeah, party for us, man.
I remember, like, I told him, and I was like, man, we got to get out. Like, we got to get this guy home. Like,
well, and I even, it's interesting because I even felt sorry. I was like apologizing to him, like, bro, I'm such a square now. Like, I used to be able to party like this, but it's like, even if you would have showed up yesterday, I don't mind showing to my rehearsal, like, a little hungover, whatever. It's just like, I just can't do that. I just can't do that right now and everything. And so we finally talked him into, okay, and he's going to go do his thing. Chris is going to take me home. And so Chris drove me over to Megan's grandparents' house, my wife's grandparents' house, and ended up, we got the wedding dress and everything like that. And then we ended up going home. And I'm glad that we did, because the moment I lived on a second floor apartment, and I remembered like climbing the stairs, and the moment I got inside, like I got drunk sick. And so ended up getting really, really sick. Luckily, again, for those of you who don't know, if you're party animals out there and you're listening to the Doughnut Box podcast, water is your best friend. The only reason that I was okay is because I chased every drink down with water at the same time. The biggest thing about alcohol is, and hangovers and such, is because you're dehydrated. And so if you follow that up with water, and so that is the only saving grace and why I was okay the next morning. So I remember waking up the next morning. I woke up on time, of course, because it's a very important event in my life. And so I woke up early. I got ready. I felt really, really good. And Chris came and picked me up. And I remember getting to the venue. And the first thing that I remember, this should tell you, like, shout out to Adrian. Man, he's a party animal. I don't know how he does it. He was there before we were. And he was dressed, ready to go, smelled great. And he had been out all night, man. He had been out all night partying. He partied for us. And he told, he was like, yeah, man, I went out and, went to the clubs and met a bunch of friends and everything like that. And I was just it just mind blows me every time of how he can just do that all night. And I can't do that, dude. I've never been able to do that. Like if I get screwed up like he does, there is no way the next few days that I'm even operational. Like there's no way. And so he showed up, he was on time, and he was doing great. Um, it's insane to me. But because did I see him any? Like, I felt good that morning. I didn't feel like when you picked me up, I
no,
don't think
you
you
were
were worried
good.
about
Yeah,
anything.
you were really worried the night before that you weren't gonna make it, and I was like, bro, I promise you. I was like, you'll get to your wedding. I said you may not be dressed, but I said we'll get you to your wedding. And that's what I said.
I think the verbiage you use is like if I have to drag you there, like we'll get you there. Like it'll be
Yeah, so
fine.
I was like already prepared to like wake up early because I woke up probably about that same time and like I texted him and I was like, bro, you awake? You good? He was like, yeah, I'm good. So everything was all good and Micah was fine. We had the wedding. It was great. The reception was great. Like it was all good.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much, man, it was just love Adrian, love the time that he was trying to have with me. Because I told him I was like, bro, you know, I wish that because I left for my honeymoon the very next day. It's like, dude, if I was staying another day, sure, the night after, let's go party, let's go out and have an all night whatever deal. So I believe in everything in moderation. I'm going to go ahead and kind of sidetrack here. So Chris does not drink, and that's his personal preference. For me, I believe that drinking is okay, everything in moderation. I think that even if you want to go out and club for one night every few years, I mean, screw it. That's not a big deal, right? Anything in moderation, I don't think that's a problem. And so it wouldn't have been any sort of thing if it wasn't the night before my wedding. I really wish that it was a few nights before and we would have had a great time. But Chris really saved me. He's a true friend. He stepped in there and was like, nah, we're going to take him back. And I'm glad he did. Like I said, I got fairly sick after I got back home, and it was like right when I walked in the door. So it was like perfect timing. Everything was just perfect timing, and so it was pretty crazy. And so now I get to tell the story about how my best friend saved me from being a hungover mess on my wedding day and whatnot. I did feel bad for him because how we had our wedding, and I'm just gonna go into this for another second here, but how we had our wedding was in two parts, and I did enjoy that part because we did the ceremony in the morning, we took a break, and then because San Antonio, Texas, in June is hot. It is hot as mess, and even though we had it in the morning, it was still fairly hot. And so, but we got done before it got super hot. We got all the photos done and everything like that. We reconvened in the evening time, right about when the sun was going down. Had a cool time, but by the time the evening rolled around, since my boy Adrian, he'd been up all night, I noticed like by the time that day was done, he was starting to feel it. Like I could tell he was tired. And so I know it was a very long day for him and whatnot, but he was our representative. He was our party animal that we lived vicariously through, and he got to have a good time and whatnot. Love him to death. When he comes back in town, whenever that is, give us a holler, man. We'd love to hang out with you and whatnot. But that's the story of when Chris saved me on the wedding day from being totally screwed up and not showing up extremely hungover to my own wedding.
Yep. Great times, great times. There's always a story that comes out somehow, some way, but that's how you know true friends for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we are going to move into our next segment, which is the Jelly Donut, and that's the jail report. So
I'm excited for this, man. What you were telling me in the intro, I got to hear about this, dude.
yeah, so as I alluded to in the intro, this guy, he wasn't an escape convict, but he literally just got out of prison like literally minutes when this story happened. And so he decided that the best way to get home was by hijacking a semi truck loaded with 10 shiny Chevrolet Corvettes worth over 1.25 million. So worth over 1.25 million. This happened in Arizona, actually. So how this happened was the man befriended the driver at a truck stop near Tucson, gained his trust, then forcibly ejected him from the cab before speeding off with a luxury haul. When deputies caught up, the man ignored lights and sirens, driving so recklessly that other vehicles had to pull over. Eventually, he stopped and was arrested on multiple felony charges. including robbery. And get this, they pinned him with theft of not just one vehicle, but 11 vehicles. So they counted all 10 vehicles plus the truck as a theft. So that's wild. Could you imagine just getting out of prison and then be like, yep, I'm sure he thought if he could get away, he could probably unload all of them and make some money.
Yeah, make a lot of money. I know what's hard for a lot of people once they leave jail, prison, that sort of thing. It's hard to get a job. So I know that a lot of people are probably thinking about that quick cash because most of the time you probably get out of jail and probably have absolutely nothing. You have no housing, you have no whatever. So I can imagine that it's probably pretty lucrative if you're like, oh man. But on the contrary, that's a lesson to you about who you're befriending because there will be a lot of people who will buddy up to you. And especially if you have something valuable like that, you ought to be very careful of who's befriending you and why they're befriending you.
Yep. The truck stop probably wasn't that far from the prison because he sounds like he went on foot. So that's definitely something to be wary of for sure. All right. This next one, this happened in Vancouver, Canada. So in a dramatic and bizarre attempt to escape police, a man in downtown Vancouver spent over 45 minutes swinging from an overhead cable above a restaurant while throwing bricks and shattering windows below. The impromptu acrobat even took off his shirt mid-stunt, turning his aerial antics into a performance no one asked for.
What kind of drugs was he on, man? Like, good grief.
I don't know. Unmoved by offers of help, the man eventually slipped while trying to rest his feet on another cable and landed on a strategically placed fire truck. Police promptly took him into custody and transported him for medical evaluation. 45 minutes. He had to have a lot of upper body strength or he had to be on drugs, as you alluded earlier.
Yeah, that's I'm thinking he had to be on some sort of drugs because those crazy stuff, meth, that sort of stuff, you can't. Not like I would know, but from what I've seen on Cops and other episodes of various television shows, it's one of those things where you don't feel anything. Like those folks are invincible and somehow they can just be holding on for 45 minutes. But that's absolutely wild, dude. Wow.
It's wild. All right, this next one. And this also happened in Arizona. An Arizona man suspected of DUI was caught in a precarious situation, literally, when deputies found him with his fingers stuck in a can of White Claw after crashing into a guardrail. When approached, the driver fumbled with the seltzer can and assured the officer that he was, quote unquote, totally perfect, despite evidence to the contrary. The man was arrested on multiple DUI charges and for causing damage to county property. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but the county sheriff's office reminded residents to report possible DUIs because, quote unquote, hard seltzer excuses don't hold up in court.
Yeah. Here's my question, man. And I talked to you about this before. This might make me sound like an old country fella, but it's like, whatever happened to beer? Why are people trying all White Claw? What's up with all that? Hard seltzer? What are you trying to do? I don't understand. No, I'm joking. But at the same time, it's just like, something I don't understand is drinking and driving. And I'm not talking about being drunk and driving. I get that. But like open container laws, I've known some people who will crack open a beer and drive, and you're going, what are you doing? And so for this guy to be rolling around, something must have gotten to him. The Arizona sun or something, man. It's just like, that's something I personally don't understand. It's like, all you have to do is get pulled over. It's not even that you have to be drunk driving. All you have to do is get pulled over and you can get charged for open container.
Yeah. And to get his finger stuck, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. So this happened. A guy gets pulled over and he told a responding deputy, quote, "You better have your doors locked. I like to steal cars." Moments later, he hopped into the deputy's cruiser and took off, kicking off a chase through the county. The joyride ended in a pit maneuver and the suspect in cuffs, proving he wasn't bluffing about his car stealing tendencies. Deputies shared the incident, reminding everyone that some warnings should be taken very, very seriously. So at least he told him, at least he said, hey, I hope you have your doors locked because guess what? I like to steal cars. And then he was like, yep, I stole the car. I told you I was going to do it. Like, it's not funny, but it's kind of comical.
the pride of some of these people, man. I mean, it's funny because you hear about a lot of these criminals and they will straight up tell the cops exactly what they're doing, or even after the fact. How many times have you heard some of these jail report stories that we've gone through some of these weeks? And some of the times we've heard that they've been caught because they'll tell their cellmate exactly what they did or whatever,
Yeah.
or even tell the cops exactly what they did. It's interesting that some of these criminals are just so keen on just telling on themselves. It's crazy to me.
It's wild. All right, last one. All right, and you know how on the jail report we love when people we don't love when people have this happen to them. We just like the stories that come out
Oh,
of it.
tell me somebody got food thrown at them.
Yeah, somebody got food thrown
Ah,
at them.
yeah,
And again, I
nice.
have to preface this with assault is never okay.
It's never
Um,
okay, but I love when people throw food at somebody. I don't,
hey,
or like I assault somebody with food. Who doesn't love a good food
and
salt
this
story?
happened in Tennessee, so you can take a guess. All
Oh,
right.
okay. Well, I was expecting Florida. I don't know why I was expecting Florida, but that's an easy choice. Go ahead.
All
What's
right.
up?
A Tennessee man is accused of throwing a biscuit at his ex-girlfriend's face and threatening to kill her and her new boyfriend. News outlets report 45-year-old Jeffrey was arrested on charges. Not my cousin Jeffrey. He's a little bit younger than 45. Sorry. News outlets report 45-year-old Jeffrey was arrested on charges including assault and public intoxication. This happened in Nashville, so officers responded Sunday to a report of domestic disturbance near a Nashville Kroger. The woman told responding officers that Jeffrey threw the biscuit and punched a car carrying her and her boyfriend. She told the police that Jeffrey also screamed threats and racial slurs. They also said the woman told authorities her boyfriend stepped in and stopped the situation from escalating further. Jeffrey was taken to a hospital after police say he repeatedly hit his head on patrol car windows while being arrested. Maybe it is my cousin Jeffrey.
Maybe
It's unclear
so.
if he has a lawyer. That's what it says. But he threw a biscuit and assaulted his ex-girlfriend with the biscuit.
So you're telling me that he didn't get the biscuit, so he gave her the biscuit. That's what I'm hearing.
Sure. Do you think it was a Popeyes biscuit? I bet you it was a Popeyes biscuit,
A
boy.
Popeyes biscuit? Yeah, I don't know, man. Popeyes
Dude,
biscuit. It had to be some sort of fast food biscuit, maybe some Bojangles or something, right?
I want to do this on the podcast, and here we go. Maybe you guys put in the comments if you want to do this idea. I thought we both get a Popeyes biscuit, right, and see how
Yeah.
long or how much of it we can eat without having to take a drink.
Yeah, that dude, side
A
note, that would
Popeyes
be
biscuit
that'd be
challenge.
pretty hard, man, because
Those things
yeah,
are dry.
those things are dry. Like they're good, don't get me wrong, but they are dry. You're right. I don't think I could make it through one without taking a sip of water, bro. I think that would be tough.
I think that's going to be our next idea. Well, that was the jail report. Out of all of those, I know probably the biscuit one was your favorite. Which one was
Yeah,
your
you
favorite?
already know. Yeah, you already know. It's the biscuit one. I don't know why this, and again, assault is never okay in any situation. But at the same time, I mean, we've reported about assault with a chicken, like with pieces of chicken. We've like something about assault with food just makes it just funny. I don't know why. I even saw, and we'll at some point probably include this. Have you ever seen the Cops episode where the lady got hit in the back of the head with a can of corn on Thanksgiving? Did you ever see that one?
Yeah,
That
I've
is
seen
that is just so funny. She gets walloped in the back of the head with the can of corn. Again, it's not funny, but at the same time, it's just like, my gosh, that's just it's something else.
Well, you know what else is something else? The donut hole. And as I alluded to in the intro, we have the office trivia for you.
Man, I'm ready for this thing. I'm hoping that I know most of these. I'm sure I will, but yeah, you said this is pretty in depth, huh? For
Yeah,
really,
I
really
really
good Office
tried.
fans.
Yeah, I really tried to avoid the later seasons like 8 or 9. So there's still like seasons 1 through 7. So I think the second or the third season is probably my favorite.
Yeah, same here. Then again, the first season of The Office always has a special place in my heart, and I think the reason being is because one, they didn't know if they were going to be renewed. Two, it was very, very raw in comparison to the rest of the show. But the reason I was talking in the intro about not necessarily knowing about the later seasons, I know about a lot of the seasons up until Michael Scott left. And then once Michael Scott left, the show just wasn't the same. I did watch it when Joe Bennett came and, Robert California and a lot of the other characters came. it just wasn't as good. So I maybe only watched it through once or twice. Like I have watched the entire thing all the way through, but it's only been probably once or twice. But up until Michael Scott left, I know pretty well, I feel like.
All right, well, let's see if you can go 10 for 10 on these questions. All
All
right.
right, let's do it.
All right, first question. What is Toby's daughter's name? A. Ashley, B. Brittany, C. Sasha, or D. Pam?
It's Sasha. It's Sasha.
That is correct.
The only reason I remember that is it was like Bring Your Kid to Work Day. I remember that one. And Michael Scott like actually got along with Toby's daughter, which was weird because he hates Toby, and you would think like, okay, you get along with his daughter, and then I kind of thought that he would kind of have a better relationship with Toby than he didn't.
Yeah. All right, number 2. Dwight used pee to write a secret letter, like urine. Dwight used urine to write a secret letter. Whose mug did he put the urine in? A. Jim's, B. Ryan, C. Andy, or D. Phyllis?
I'm gonna say Andy. Wasn't it Andy's?
It's actually Ryan.
It was actually Ryan. Okay, I got that one wrong. I do remember that episode though, and the mugs were all. I could tell you where the mugs came from. It was all based on a party that Kelly had, and she had made all the mugs with their faces on it for the people who came to the party. I do remember that, but I didn't remember whose mug he used. So you got me on that one.
How many times did Aaron have lice as a child? A. 22, B. 17, C. 10, or D. 12?
I'm going to say 12. I really don't know this one. I'm going to say 12.
It is 22.
22. I know she was not an orphan, foster kid.
Yeah, she was a foster kid.
Yeah, I remembered that. And then wasn't there kind of a bonus thing? Wasn't there a whole thing where they thought maybe Phyllis was her mom, or like maybe Phyllis thought that she was like her biological mom at one point or something like that?
They did think that. Yep. All right. What denomination of Christianity does Daryl belong to? Is he A, Episcopalian, B, Baptist, C, Lutheran, or D, Presbyterian?
Dude, I really don't know. You picked some hard questions. You were right about this being a really true office trivia. For some reason, my mind wants to say Presbyterian.
It is Presbyterian because it was a religion, and then Pam goes, "Yeah, same religion," and I'm like, "They're just a different denomination of Christianity."
You're right, exactly.
All right.
Okay.
Number 5. What year did Andy graduate Cornell? A, 1994, B, 1995, C, 1996, or D, 1997?
I'm going to say 96. Was it 96?
It's 95.
95.
That's a hard one.
So Andy Bernard is actually one of my least favorite characters. A lot of people like him. I personally don't, especially in the earlier seasons, and naturally so because he was the suck up guy. Like we've all known the people in the legitimate places that we've worked who have just been the suck up guy, who have like graduated and they think they're all that in a bag of chips. And it's like, dude, you're in the same boat that we all are in. And yeah, you went to an Ivy League school, but you still are doing the same job we all are. So it doesn't mean anything.
All right. Next one. Creed has a second passport to which country? A, Sweden, B, Switzerland, C, Colombia, or D, the Netherlands?
It's Colombia, wasn't it?
Nope, it's Switzerland.
No. Switzerland. Okay.
Yep.
I should have known that. Creed Bratton is one of my favorite characters on that show. And it's funny because he's like a side character, but I think he's pretty funny. For those of you who don't know him in real life, his name is actually Creed Bratton, and you know how they used to have the commercials for the Dos Equis, like the most interesting man in the world. If you look up everything he's done, including acting in The Office, he's had a very interesting life. In fact, he was a part of like a hippie band that performed in Woodstock back in the 60s and all sorts of stuff. So if you've never looked him up, yeah, give it a look because he's done a lot of stuff in his life.
All right, number 7. What is the secret to Kevin's chili? You should know this. A, mince the garlic, B, dice the tomatoes, C, undercook the onions, or D, slow cook overnight?
Undercook the onions. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, it's right. Undercook the onion. Bro, I don't know why. It always makes me feel... This is how you know the acting is good, but it makes me feel so bad when he dumps that bowl of chili all over the floor. Like, it makes me feel so bad.
For sure. All right. Number 8. Michael buys concert tickets from Holly. Which concert was Holly supposed to go see? A. Weird Al, B. Bruce Springsteen, C. Coldplay, or D. Counting Crows?
Counting Crows. It was Counting
Yep.
Crows.
Yep. All right.
That was
This
Counting
one,
Crows.
this is not related to the next two are not related to the plot, but it's related to the actors. Okay. So use your best guess. John Krasinski, who played Jim, Mindy Kaling, who played Kelly, and Angela Kinsey, who played Angela, were all at one point interns for who? David Letterman, Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, or D. Jerry Seinfeld?
It's either A or B. I'm gonna say Jay Leno, maybe.
Actually, Conan O'Brien.
Conan O'Brien, really? Okay, interesting. I
Yep.
didn't. I forget how long Conan O'Brien has been doing his late night deal. Like, he's really been around for a while. But for me, I guess this is kind of weird. I don't know. How about you? I haven't really watched a lot of late night television, but I always think about Letterman and Jay Leno. And I think about
Yeah.
them being for a long time. And so Conan O'Brien still, to me, in my mind, is like newer, but at the same time, he's been doing it for like
Yeah,
30
he's kind
years
of
at
the
this
old
point. So,
ones. All right, last question, and then there's a bonus question.
okay.
Rainn Wilson, who played Dwight, originally auditioned for which character? Jim Halpert, Michael Scott, Stanley Hudson, or Roy?
I'm gonna say Jim Halpert. Didn't he audition for Jim?
No, he auditioned for Michael Scott. Everyone
He
knows
auditioned for Michael Scott.
that John Krasinski auditioned for Dwight,
For
but not
Dwight,
many
right?
people know that Rainn Wilson auditioned for Michael Scott. So
Yeah,
it
I
makes
didn't
it
know
that
that.
much more funnier that he wants to take over the office. All right,
Yeah, exactly.
last bonus question. What does Dwight keep an extra pair of in his car in case of special occasions?
Bergenstocks. I can already tell
Okay,
you.
all right, there you go. I didn't even have to read the.
You didn't even have to read the choices. So yeah, I did okay. I think I got like 50% of them. What do you
Yeah,
say?
you
I
did
got
about
probably
half.
half and half.
Yep,
So,
you did about
but
half.
for how in depth those questions were, I'll take 50-50. That's pretty good. And especially to this point, I probably haven't watched The Office in a year or two, actually. So, it's pretty good for a year or two.
There you go. Well, we are going to move into what fries my donuts. And Micah, I know you have a lengthy discussion on what fries your donuts, but enlighten the rest of us.
All right, man. I'm going to try to keep it short because, yes, I can make this incredibly lengthy. I've talked about this before. If you've listened to the audio version of this podcast before we have come out on video in the previous seasons, but it seems like every time I go to the airport and fly, and I had the opportunity to do so this past week, I experienced the same thing. And this is primarily post COVID. And Chris, maybe you can tell me if you've experienced these things as well. But post COVID, man, there is a lack of caring about other people that is just kind of astonishing. It really is. And what I mean by that is it's a lack of understanding, empathy, and then also it is a lack of self-awareness as well. Some of the biggest problems that I had in the airport that really fried my donuts this week. One, people listening to videos on their cell phones out loud on loud volume. Why? We live in a day and age where we have the best technology. I mean, look at what I'm wearing right now. I have Bluetooth headphone right here that I'm listening to Christopher with, right? And look how small it is. You can't even tell it's in here, right? But it's great. And it's one of those things too. When you're on the planes, the airlines we were flying on, because I went through Atlanta and I was flying on Delta, they give you earphones every flight you go on for free. They give you the headphones. They give it to you. Yet people will still be on the plane listening out loud to their videos, their TikToks, their whatever. That is so rude and inconsiderate. I can't stand that stuff, man. I really can't, because my thing is beyond the headphone portion of it. Maybe it's just me, but common courtesy in my mind is I recognize I am in a room full of people. Really and truly, when you're on a plane, you're in a metal tube full of about 100 people, depending on what kind of plane you're on. Sometimes even more, sometimes less. But typically, the flights we were on were about 100 people or more. And you're sitting there going, okay, I got 100 people around me. I'm not going to disturb them, right? I don't want to disturb them. I want them not to disturb me either. It's a common courtesy thing. And so when people are listening to things on their phone, you're going, why? And not just that, I'm even okay with you listening to things on low. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is these people will listen to it on full volume. I mean, full volume to where the whole entire plane can hear them. And what's frustrating about this, and what I like about Delta, is they do have free fast Wi-Fi, which is great. However, what does that open up things to? People are watching their TikToks more. People are watching their YouTube shorts more, or YouTube in general, or whatever they're watching, Instagram, wherever they're at. And they have these things full volume, and the videos are so short, but they repeat. And one of the main problems that I had was there's a dude sitting here watching this thing, watching a video 5, 6 times in a row, over and over and over again. And you're going, dude, shut the heck up. Like, I'm tired of hearing the stupid video over and over. I got it, and I'm not even watching the stupid video, right? Like, I've already got the point of what the stupid video is trying to say, and I'm not even there. So you've got that. Not just that, one of the main things that irks me the most, I've got a full list, and I'm not going to go through the full list, but this is the other part that really fries my donuts, and I'm going to let Chris chime in after this, is the embarking of the plane, boarding the plane, and debarking or offboarding of the plane. I can't stand that process. If I ever started an airline, if I ever had that much money, because it takes a lot of money to do that, if I ever had that much money, I don't understand why we don't do this row by row. I really don't. Because the thing is, we have these stupid idiots who are on the back of the plane who stand up at the end of this effing flight, and they're like, it's like, bro, you have a line in front of you of all these people. Not just that, but you have people like trying to fight and squeeze. And now I do understand if you have a flight that is about, you got to make your connection and what, but a lot of these people do not. A lot of these people are not trying to do that. They're trying to, basically, they're being jerks about things. And so that brings me back to the point about post-COVID. I've flown pre-COVID, I've flown post-COVID. And the biggest things that I have noticed difference-wise, people don't care about other people. People don't care that there are people that are in front of them. They will intentionally try to grab their bag, squeeze past people, and we all know the aisles in airplanes ain't big enough to squeeze past folks. Like, it's not. And I witnessed this. I don't know. We flew only 2 flights. And on those 2 flights, I witnessed this on both, where people were trying to squeeze past other people who were trying to get their bags off the overhead bin. And I do understand it, because on the other front, there are people who are getting things, and this is where I'm going to go into boarding. When they're boarding, I've seen so many people, when they're boarding a flight, they take so long to put their bag up, or they just dilly-dally, and it's just like, dude, we've got 100 people behind you. Seriously. Get on the plane, put your bag in, get in the chair. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about how fast we're getting on. Nobody cares how fast we're getting off. And the deal is, it slows people down when people in the back of the plane are grabbing their bags and trying to squeeze past other people. And I understand other people are being slow, but again, where I think the airlines go wrong, and what I wish we could change, especially in the day and age after COVID, where we have been taught and conditioned to, hey, think about yourself, think about your own safety, your own protection, and your own health. I feel like those kind of mentalities have gotten us to a point where we're going, okay, I don't care about you. I don't care about the next guy. I'm going to grab my bag. I'm going to move past you because you're going slow. And I think everything could be solved if literally we went row by row. Okay, the flight attendants go down the rows. How easy would it be if the flight attendants go, okay, it's your row's turn. All 4, 6, however many people are in this row, right? If it's 3 by 3, all 6 of y'all stand up, get your bag, pile off. We wait a second. That way it gives a little bit of spacing. Okay, great. Next row. And vice versa. When you're boarding, the same thing, instead of doing, because they have like 18 zones at this point, right? Zone 18, boarding now, zone 18. Why wouldn't you just say boarding now? If you're row 7, we're boarding row 7. If we're boarding row 8, we're boarding row 9. We have enough zones at this point to where we might as well just do row by row. I don't understand that, because when we go down the jet bridge, there's so many people backed up, at a certain point, you're halfway down the jet bridge and you're going, okay, this doesn't make any sense anyways. So I feel like, my beef a lot is with the airline itself, the boarding process, and then not just that, but the people aspect. Don't leave it up to people because people will always choose themselves over the common courtesy, I feel like.
Yeah, it's like what you said, people we're still in a survivalist mindset of people are like, it's gonna be me and mine first. I'm gonna take care of mine. And really it's I hate to say it, but it's like primal instincts kick in, you know what I mean? And like if you notice that, like primal you leave a group of kids in a room unsupervised for 5 minutes, primal instincts kick in, right? So it's like people want to be guided and directed. They won't admit that, but people will be like, oh yeah, this is like at a funeral, like they dismiss you row by row. So it's not like a free for all. There's an order, there's a process. And so
Even the funeral procession of cars, they tell you
yeah,
what order to go in.
yeah, I would do the embarking like you said, zone 1, rows 36 through 29. Like and then everyone gets it, that way people get all the way to the back of the plane and people aren't holding each other up. And I've never been the one to understand, okay, I get priority boarding, I get on the plane first. It's like you're just going to be sitting on the plane waiting for everybody else. Like that doesn't make sense
So,
to me.
yeah, and I've been lucky enough to fly business class twice. I've been lucky enough to do that twice, where you do get the priority boarding. And sure, it's nice, but at the same time, like Chris said, you're sitting there for a long time, and it still aggravates you because you're watching all these people embark on the plane, and you're watching them go back there, take their sweet behind time to get their bag up there. And now, again, here I'm going to kind of caveat here. If you're an older person or if you have some sort of physical disability or things like that, I understand. But again, these people also don't ask the flight attendant for help, and they should. And so that also holds a lot of stuff up as well. It's a pride issue on that front. I'm not even going to go into that. But the thing is, it takes so long. Something that I've never understood as well, and maybe this is me again, if I had my own airline and wanted to start my own airline, I've never understood why, because there's an option at a lot of places to board the plane on the ground, right? Most airports have a stairway, and the reason they do this, they have a stairway that's either coming off the jet bridge or that is coming down into the airport, down to the ground. Like even Lubbock Airport, we were from Lubbock. They had the same thing. I remember they were redoing the gates at one point, and they had they all have stairs that go down to the ground, and you can board the plane on the ground. My thing is, you can even make it to where, okay, if you fly first and business class, you get to use the jet bridge. Congratulations, you get to use the jet bridge, and then put one of those stairways on the back of the plane. Everybody else boards the back of the plane. That automatically makes sure that everybody that is coming down and walking out on the tarmac, they're boarding the back of the plane while the front is boarding. It saves so much time. And in an industry that I'm very familiar with, but in an industry that is all about time, effectiveness, money, and process, you would think that they would have this process way better than they have it right now. But you leave the biggest thing, and I go back to it, you leave anything up to humans to determine on their own, just your individual preference, they're going to screw it up.
Yeah.
Like there will be some people that will do it right, like myself, who think about common courtesy, who think about other people, but the vast majority of people, and again, the point that I was making about pre-COVID and versus post-COVID, I did notice pre-COVID, so many more people were like, okay, I'm amongst 100 people on this plane. I need to think about other people. We're just not getting that anymore. And so these procedures that we're having where we're leaving it to people to determine are even worse because now they're only thinking about themselves and have zero common courtesy. So it's to me, that's what bothers me. I think it's more endemic of where our society is at right now. I think really and truly it's the tip of the iceberg or the root or the fruit of the problem, not the root of the problem, whatever you want to say. It's just more endemic of where our society is at here in the United States.
Yep. Everyone is more selfish and Yeah, that's a problem that transcends not just traveling in the airline business, my friend. There's a whole different area of a lot of things that bleeds into, but
Yeah,
another subject
absolutely.
for another day.
That's a whole nother what fries my donuts. But man, I'm ready to move on to this next subject. Enough of this negative stuff here. Let's talk about some fun, positive stuff, and let's come up with some good improv stuff. And we're going to move into our mystery donut, which is our improv segment. Dude, I love this segment. And today we're doing something I especially love, and that is the randomizer. We have a machine that randomizes different things. We can put different inputs into it and it will spit things out, and then we will have to act these things out. So we are going to put it into the randomizer. Today, I'm thinking that we are going to, because we have choices, I'm thinking that let's do a profession at a location doing an action. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right. The profession is a dog trainer.
Okay.
You gotta love the randomizer. Gotta love the randomizer.
Okay.
A dog trainer who is in a mountain cabin
Uh,
feeding pigeons. That's the action that we're doing.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right.
You ready?
I can go first. Ready?
Yep.
Hello, my good sir. I was wondering if I could borrow some bread for you so I might feed these pigeons here.
Let me ask you a question. Why in the heck are you British? When the heck did you become British?
Well, I'll say this, mate. I train dogs, and you have to be of the highest class to train dogs, not like a southern fella like yourself.
Listen now, I don't know what you're trying to say about Southern people, but I'll tell you this much. We know how to feed pigeons better than the rest of them. We also know how to train dogs better than the rest of them, too. I don't know what you're trying to say about Southern people. You done be derogatory about something. Plus, you kind of got that wandering accent. It started off British, now you're Australian. I'm kind of confused.
Well, I'm half Australian, half half British, mate. I don't mean to be rude, but calling your wife a dog isn't necessarily nice, is it? I know you know how to train dogs, but training your wife, that's the only thing you guys know how to train down there, huh?
Listen now. We know how to train more things than just the lady folk, all right? We know how to train. I can't say that because that's a family program, but we know how to train plenty, all right? We know how to train dogs, cats, my wife, my kids. We even know how to train. Yeah, I can't say that again because that's a family program, so we're going to leave that there. I also know how to do pigeons now because if you feed them enough, what ends up happening is they build up a dependency. And what ends up happening, next thing you know, good old country boy Mike here, he's got himself some pet pigeons who can do whatever the heck he wants them to do.
I do apologize, sir. I don't think you quite understood what I was saying. I was simply calling your wife a dog because she is so ugly that she looks like a dog. So that's
Now,
what I was inferring by. I know that your education is how do you put it, subpar, but I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I'm insulting your wife, saying she looks like a dog.
now, two things about your last statement. One, my wife does look like a dog. I do agree with that. But there ain't too many choices down here, all right? There's literally Cindy Lou or my wife. And it's either you want her to look like a pig or a dog. That's the two choices you got. And I chose dog over pig, all right? And so the second thing is, I don't know what subpar means. So you talk about my education level and you're saying that school's good. That's what I'm assuming subpar means. Yeah, it is good. The school down here is great.
Well, sir, I was wondering if maybe I could borrow some bread to help feed these pigeons because they're getting quite lean, aren't they?
Why you always gotta finish things with a dang question? That's my question. Every time I'd be talking to British, Australian folks, they're like, "Isn't it? Don't it? What is that supposed to mean? Why you always gotta end in a question? All I gotta say is, we'll feed the dang pigeons. No question about it."
Well, that's great, sir, because I think I might go in and have some jam and some tea because it's getting quite cold out here, isn't it?
Tea? What's the deal with tea? What's the deal with tea? Listen, I pass stronger urine samples than tea. I don't understand why y'all are all about tea. Coffee, now that's a drink. I don't understand you British people and this tea crap. Especially, you're talking about feeding this pigeon. I don't even know if you know how to do that, drinking freaking tea.
Well, sir, I would like to bid you a farewell because I'm losing many brain cells the longer that I am talking to you. So I bid you a good day and best of luck to you.
Yeah, drinking tea, you British. Anyways, I
Dude,
can't
I
say
don't
that
know
because it's a
what's
family
been
thing.
with you. I guess since ever you came through the South, your Southern accent has just been.
Dude, I'm telling you. So Chris and I went to the South this last week, and man, it really has been coming out. Even though I went to work, right, and a lot of the people that I work with, I have to be very professional at my job, and they even noticed a little bit of a twang difference. So I do think that it's one of those things. I wouldn't say win in Rome, but like I guess win in the South, it just changes. I don't know.
I forget it, brother.
I forget it, brother.
That's
Speaking of The
another
Office.
office reference. We reference that line a lot when reading certain literature this week. But
Yes, certain books that have to do with Mr. Moosey and his dinner.
hey, I thought we were supposed to end on a positive note.
Yes, we are. So I'll say this. We should end on our Eclair segment, which is our positive advice, which is our last segment here. And Chris, I don't remember who went
It's your
first
turn
last
to
time.
go first. It's your
Okay,
turn.
perfect. So every time that I fly, I'm always reminded of something, and it's always very encouraging to me. No matter how cloudy life looks or how stormy life looks, there's always sun on the other side of those clouds. I took off this last week, and the conditions we were flying out of, it was very cloudy. I wouldn't say stormy, but it was very thick. It was very thick, even some fog and things like that. And it always just blows my mind of when you're standing on the ground, and even though life looks dark and life looks gloomy and things like that, yeah, it takes a good bit to punch through those clouds and whatnot, but just how beautiful it is on the other side, how blue the sky is, how amazing those clouds look while they're underneath you. And really, it's indicative of the clouds are the process in which you're going through in life. It's beautiful once you get on the other side. Yes, it's scary and they're very dark and looming while you're going through them. And even while you're on the ground going, man, I still got to go through that. Like, I got to go through that. But once you get on the other side, you realize the beauty of the progress that you've made by punching through those clouds. And not just that, but you come to the other side, and I don't know about you, and I know you've flown before, but it's like when you get to the other side, and maybe it's just the effect of not seeing the blue sky until you get past that point. But the sky is bluer than you've ever seen it when you get to the other side. And you can see all sorts of things. And so that's my eclair this week, is just because you might be on the ground and you're seeing a situation coming about in life, or maybe you're going through a situation and you're flying through these clouds, and it's not easy because it's turbulent. It's bad. You're flying through storms and everything else. There is always sun and the bluest sky on the other end of that. You just got to keep ascending. You got to keep ascending. And before you know it, you'll be out of that. You'll look down at those clouds. You'll realize the processes that you needed to go through and the lessons that you needed to learn in order to get to where you are now, and enjoy the blue sky that you have come to work through to get to. And I don't know, that's always a great reminder for me whenever we're flying and we fly through bad weather. Is it always gives me a ton of encouragement. So I just wanted to give you guys that this week for my eclair.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Mine is a little bit different. Mine is I heard this, so I'm not, don't credit me with saying this, but it said don't give people level 10 access without requiring them level 10 responsibility. So I've had to learn this like
That's
the hard way. So because I'm a pretty open, natural guy. I meet someone, I immediately like, okay, you can go into access level 10, like to the deepest parts of me, but realize you can't do that for everybody. There are some people that I will pick up the phone for, like Micah's one of those people. Like, you call me at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., I'm picking up the phone for you, no matter what, because we have that kind of friendship, because we put in that trust and put in that time. There's some people, if it's after 5 o'clock, like no disrespect, but I'm not answering your phone call. Like, I will probably answer it the next day. I'll respond to you. But if you're calling me, it's because I know if you're calling me after 5 o'clock and I've had this conversation before, like, it's like you're usually calling me about something that probably can wait till tomorrow anyway. But there are certain people that I'll pick up the phone for, like my wife, obviously, Micah, obviously. Like, it doesn't matter what time of day. Like, you call me, I'm there, or I'll show up there. But before, I would just show up like in the middle of the night for anybody. And it's like, you can't do that, because then that's when people start to take advantage of you. And I'm not saying you have to be guarded, but kind of like, I think Micah said this, like, there's like layers, right? Like, kind of like when you get security access to certain things, like when you work in a building, people have like level 5 security access. They can get anywhere. If you have level 3 security access, you can get to some places, but not everywhere, right? So it just depends on these people in your life. And so you have to sit down and ask yourself, like, who in my life has full access to me anytime, anywhere? And then who are those people that I need to kind of like start tapering back that access? Because the truth is, if you called them at 3 in the morning, they probably wouldn't show up for you. So hear me, I'm not saying like block everybody, cut everybody out, but determine like, okay, is this a level 1 person, level 5 person? So, and it helps you keep healthy boundaries that way, for sure.
Absolutely. And it kind of goes back to, I'm just going to allude to this. When we were talking about the story at the beginning of the podcast about my wedding and things like that, and how it almost went a certain way. It's hard because you want to trust everybody. Like Chris and I, our first instincts and how we were raised and everything else is you trust everybody until there is not, they give you something to not trust them about, or they give you something to, they do something to not do that. Sometimes everything in moderation. There is always moderation to everything. And so you don't want to be too trusting. You also don't want to be too close fisted with your trust. And so it's hard because sometimes, Chris and I's natural want is to be totally trusting on this end, but it's gotten us in trouble over the time. It's gotten me in trouble over time where you trust the wrong people and you trust them innately, and then before you know it, they let you down consistently. And so I understand what Chris is saying. Again, it's all about moderation, not saying you don't trust people, but at the same time, just like Chris is saying with the levels of access, be careful of who you give access to certain things, because you don't want those people using that information against you or anything like that. However, if these people are proving that they are trustworthy people that you can trust in your life, give them more access. And that is all a part of the balance that you have to strike within yourself. So don't go too far one direction, don't go too far the other direction. And each situation is different. And if you're going through one of those situations, it's very difficult, but at the same time, you got it. It's, again, you're able to tell. Just think about those 2 fence posts and try to keep it in between there.
Yeah, I think Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you their true colors, believe them. And so I found myself that this week of like, because I just made a major move, if you guys couldn't tell from we've kind of hinted at it, but I found myself going like, why didn't this person text me? Or I wish this person would have reached out. And it's like, well, have they given you a track record of reaching out to you before? It's like, no. So why am I that upset? So you just got to keep it moving. But hey, I want to take a minute to plug Trash Can Travel. And this is mostly on Micah. Micah has put so much hard work into this, and he has a lot of content coming out. And really, this past week, getting to talk with Micah, I got to like hear more of like, I know that Micah loves planes, right? Like, I know that about him, but like just to hear his passion and his energy about he's putting towards the channel, and just how he really cares for the aviation community. And I mean, some YouTubers, they might just post that stuff and not care. You know what I mean? Like, they might just be like, oh yeah, like this will give me some views, and not care. But Micah really does care. And so it was really cool to like see that. And so y'all go check it out. Check out his hard work, because it's really cool, the cool stuff he's doing. He's got a lot of ideas cooking that I'm sure he'll roll out pretty soon.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate the plug, man. And like Chris said, he's really not involved in trash can travel. It's mostly me on that end because he's not
Oh,
interested
you.
in those things. Like
It's
he's
not
not
most
interested
of
in
you. It's
those things,
all you.
and that's totally fine. Like I'm not. I don't. I understand he's not interested in those things. But those of you who are fans of trash can travel on both YouTube and Instagram, I really, really thank you guys. To this point, I haven't showed my face on here. Or on Trash Can Travel, that is. But that's about to happen, and we're about to start talking about aviation mysteries. We're about to start talking about, a lot of things. And I'll just encourage you to go check it out over there because a lot of that, in fact, is going to be coming out this next upcoming week. I know this is dropping on Monday, so be looking for that this week, probably Wednesday, Thursday, Friday time frame. And so if you're interested in the aviation side of things, yeah, come check it out. It's one of those things that, like, this podcast is fun for me. Aviation is incredibly fun for me as well. So it is definitely a hobby that I just love to do. But I love connecting with you guys. If you guys love aviation, shoot, I was even at the coffee shop earlier and I got a follower from a guy who I had no clue liked aviation. You know what's interesting, man? We were literally just talking about it, and he knows that because my wife, I love her. She's so supportive of my aviation passion and everything like that. And we go to the airport, and we'll take drives around the airport here in the town that I live in and everything, and go watch planes. And sometimes we'll go get coffee beforehand. And this guy was like, "Oh, so you go to the airport and whatnot?" And he started following me, and he was just like, "Man, I'm kind of a casual follower of aviation, but I really, really love this." So even if you're a casual follower of aviation, if you just like kind of just seeing planes, or if it's one of those things of like, man, I haven't flown for, I know people who are not passionate about aviation. They're like, man, I haven't flown in forever. A lot of my videos are about the flights that I've taken and the planes that I've been on. And so if you're interested in that, please come and come check that out. Love to see you guys over there. But the other thing that I'd love to plug is our own station over here, and that's the Trash Can Network at the Trash Can Network. So if you guys are watching us on video, you already know where we're at. You're already there. Congratulations. I appreciate you guys so very, very much. If you guys want to see our face, kind of like I said at the very beginning of this episode, over at the Trash Can Network, and then you can also type in Doughnut Box Podcast. That's DOUGH Box Podcast, and both will come up. I've got the keyword for both of that. And even if you're like, oh, I like the podcast, I'm already following it. Trash Can Travel, there's also the link there on Instagram and on YouTube. So it's all linked together if you're looking for all of that. But there's plenty that's going to be going
We're
on.
not on TikTok because as of today, I think when this episode drops, it's banned. So
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't want that Chinese crap. No ways. We didn't. We weren't on there anyways. In fact, it's funny. Chris and I actually talked about that a few months ago about expanding to TikTok because it was so. And I was just like, man, I just don't want to get on there. And I'm glad that we didn't end up going on there just because of what ended up happening. It's a God thing. You know what? It's that gift of prophecy. We knew what was coming on that front, but. We really appreciate you guys. Really, really appreciate you guys. We're gaining traction on our YouTube channel. We're getting more and more views on their full episodes. Our shorts are getting quite a bit more views than I thought we were going to be getting so early on, showing our faces, and of course on Spotify, on Apple Music, on our RSS feed, on iHeartRadio, on all of these other platforms. We're getting a lot of listens, and man, I can appreciate you guys and really tell you guys how much we love y'all and appreciate y'all. We never even thought, because Chris and I talked about, as he talked about on this trip, we talked about, I couldn't even imagine that 50 people would have listened to us at age 14, 15 when we started making content. And so the fact that we've had hundreds and thousands of you guys listening to us is amazing. So I am very, very grateful. Chris is very grateful. We're grateful for you guys. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited for what's to come. But yeah, man, that's about all I got.
yep, it's time for the Starship to land the plane and take us out. So Starship, take us on out. I'm Chris.
And I'm Micah.
And this is the Doughnut Box Podcast.
Let me keep talking and we'll just keep circling the plane around the airport before we like. No, I'm joking.